Daily bias is one of the most crucial aspects of trading analysis to find the most high probability setups. So let's break down everything I know about daily bias and how I will determine a daily bias so that you can learn from me and hopefully improve your trading. Now you might think we're going to start off on the charts for this video, but we're actually not. We're going to start off with the seasonal tendencies graph. So this graph I have had to pay for from James Moore Research, which is what ICT recommends when he talks about seasonal tendencies. This graph is essentially going to show you what the asset that you're trading is most likely to do based on what it's done seasonally for the past 20-25 years. So if I zoom in onto the NASDAQ chart, you can see we have a 28-year pattern and a 15-year pattern. Now what we're going to do is look for the real obvious moves of this graph to determine what the NASDAQ is most likely to do seasonally based off what it's done for the past few decades. Now this doesn't mean that the NASDAQ is absolutely going to do what this graph says. It's just that if this says that it's going to do something and you can see that that is possibly playing out on the chart, you can be more confident in that daily bias. So for example, near the end of June, we can see that we make a very significant low. You want to look for where this 15-year pattern, which is the dotted line, and the 28-year pattern, which is the solid line up, because obviously that's going to be the strongest seasonal tendencies. And an extra little tip is that when we don't follow what the seasonal tendency is, we are likely very strong in that direction. So if the seasonal tendency says that we should likely be bearish, but we are actually bullish on the chart, then we are very likely very bullish. And that is kind of what's playing out right now. For the end of May to the beginning of June, to about the second week of June, we are typically bearish on the NASDAQ. Obviously, if you've had a look at the NASDAQ chart lately, which if you're watching this video, I hope you've done, then you will notice that we are actually going upwards. Now that would indicate that we are likely very strong on the daily chart for the NASDAQ. So let's actually get onto the daily chart and start talking about how we find a daily bias. So the main thing my eyes jump to when I'm trying to determine a daily bias is where are the imbalances and where is the liquidity on that daily chart. So right now we are currently in this daily SIBI all the way back from the 24th of February, and we can see that we've been working into that SIBI, hitting the midpoint of it and rejecting, and we are currently at the midpoint of it. We also have this liquidity level right here, which would be the previous week's high. And we have another daily fair value gap down here, which I'm extending to the bodies because if you look, the close of Monday's candle was 554.50 and the open of Tuesday's candle was 555 even. So this candle's open 2 ticks higher than the candle before it. So that is technically a volume imbalance, which means we'll extend that fair value gap to the body. And then the same thing happened with Wednesday's candle. And then a higher target is we also have this daily SIBI just above the previous one. So we could look to target that. And essentially, you're going to look on a lower time frame to get into trades with your daily bias, obviously. And anything below price, you want to see hold price above it. So, for example, this daily fair value gap that we've just formed, I would want to see that daily fair value gap get respected and send us higher. And if I go into a lower time frame, I'm willing to bet that there is potentially some pretty high probability setups forming around the specific levels of that daily fair value gap. And when I say specific levels, I mean the high of it, the midpoint of it, the low of it, and the lower and upper quadrant of it. Preferably the high, upper midpoint, or the midpoint of that daily fair value gap are going to be the best setups for longs, as the lower we get into that daily fair value gap, the weaker price it is. And then you could go even more in depth with this. Like I say, any PD array that you are comfortable using and want to use, then feel free to. It all will help you in some way or another. For example, we have this very long wick from Thursday, so we could extend the midpoint of that across. And if you are someone who likes to use wicks, then you could look for that to offer a setup as well. And interestingly enough, that midpoint of the wick lines up with the high of that daily fair value gap. Now, daily bias isn't always going to be this simple and straightforward. It's not always going to be so obvious and clear to you where price is going. And that is perfectly fine. It just means that you're going to have to drop onto a lower time frame, like a 4-hour chart, a 1-hour chart, and trade intraday liquidity. So you're going to be looking for specific liquidity pools like London session liquidity and PM session liquidity, pre-market liquidity, and you're going to be looking for them to offer setups. Now you can use them obviously every day as well, but when you have a daily bias and you have those daily levels lining up with your setups, then you can be even more confident in that trade. Now, one other thing I like to do, and ICT actually did recently speak about this in this week, and if you go into my Discord, you can see that I was mentioning I did think that was a possibility at the time when it happened. And by the way, the Discord is in the description for absolutely free. Feel free to go and join that. But what I'm talking about is what is referred to by ICT as an immediate rebalance. That is where we have a candle and then a second candle which shoots off in a direction, and then the third candle comes back down and taps the low of it, basically closing in a fair value gap that would have formed. When that happens and it is in line with your bias, then you can be very confident that we are going to have a strong upwards move for that day. And then you can obviously do this on the lower time frames. I don't really tend to. I do like looking for them on the daily chart, but any lower, I just kind of ignore them, or I'm focusing on other things in price. But if I highlight that daily candle high in green, then that would be this high on the 15-minute chart, and you can see that we came down on Tuesday, closed that possible fair value gap in from forming, and then shot off for the entirety of that day. And here is a screenshot from the time, so you know that I'm not bullshitting you. You can see that I did have this Friday daily high marked out, and if you read this, then you can see that I was mentioning that the Friday daily high seems to be offering a level of support, and in my mind, I'm thinking daily immediate rebalance. So I wasn't that sure that London low would get swept and that we would just run higher for the day. And then of course on the daily chart we have other things like daily order blocks. So if you're going to look for an order block, I would suggest you look for one that lines up with the fair value gap or is part of a fair value gap like this one is. You can see that we came down in the latter portion of this week, tagged this daily order block, and then that started this second run higher to reach into that daily SIBI for the second time. And then while some people might class this Thursday down close candle as an order block, I personally wouldn't, just because I like my order blocks to line up with fair value gaps like this one does. I like them to either line up with fair value gaps, meaning that the open of this candle, I would like to extend that across and see it cut through a fair value gap, or like I said with this one, it is part of that fair value gap pattern. Those are going to be your highest probability order blocks. Now I will be posting this later tonight, so I just want to put a kind of disclaimer out there to not trade based off of that analysis I've just given you on that daily chart. This could do absolutely anything. We have NFP on Friday, so do not trade based off that analysis. I've said it, and if you do, then that's your fault if you lose. Don't come blaming me. I'm trying to teach you how to read the daily chart, not trying to give you trade signals for you to go and lose money on. And if you are one of those people that's going to take my trading analysis and go and place a trade based off of it, then you are absolutely going to fail as a trader. And if you don't believe me, go and check out that video right there. That is all I have for you boys in this video. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. And if you are trading for the remainder of the week, I will wish you good luck, good trading. Catch you later, boys.